Imagine this. You've just experienced the greatest failure of your life. Everything you worked for, gone. The dreams, the hard work, the sleepless nights, vanished in an instant. And now you're standing on the edge, consumed by the pain of it all. But what if I told you that this moment of failure is not the end? What if this very failure holds the key to unlocking an inner fire within you, one that can propel you to new heights of strength, resilience, and ultimate fulfillment? The Stoics, ancient philosophers who lived through countless adversities, knew this secret. And today, we're going to dive deep into their wisdom to discover how you too can transform failure into a path toward greatness. Section 1. The Stoic perception of failure. The first thing we need to understand is how the Stoics perceived failure. To them, failure wasn't something to fear. It wasn't a symbol of weakness or inadequacy. Instead, they saw failure as an inevitable, even necessary part of life. Let's take Marcus Aurelius, for example. Marcus wasn't just a philosopher. He was the emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the world at that time. But despite his high status, Marcus experienced monumental failures. He was betrayed by close allies, faced with the constant threat of war, and even suffered deeply personal losses, such as the deaths of his children. And yet, Marcus didn't crumble under the weight of these setbacks. He didn't let failure define him. Instead, he saw it as an opportunity for growth. In his personal journal Meditations, Marcus wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This is one of the most profound Stoic teachings. What Marcus means here is that failure, rather than being an obstacle, can actually become the very path to our greatest successes. The barrier that seems to stop us in our tracks can, with the right mindset, be the thing that pushes us forward. This concept is known as cognitive reframing, a mental exercise the Stoics used to shift their perception of events. Instead of viewing failure as the end, they saw it as a challenge, a tool for refining their inner strength. Actionable example. Let's take a modern-day example. Imagine you're an entrepreneur who has poured your heart and soul into a startup, only for it to fail. Instead of seeing it as a complete defeat, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I use this experience to improve? The Stoic mindset teaches us to see every failure as a lesson, not a death sentence. Section 2. Embracing control and letting go. One of the core teachings of Stoicism is the dichotomy of control. This principle states that there are two types of things in life: those we can control and those we cannot. Epictetus, another great Stoic philosopher, was born a slave. Talk about a man who knew adversity. Yet, despite his circumstances, he taught that true freedom comes from recognizing what's within our power and letting go of what isn't. He famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Imagine this. You're a sailor, caught in a violent storm. You can't control the winds or the waves, but you can control how you steer the ship. That's life. We can't always control the external events that happen to us, whether we fail at a business venture, lose a job, or face personal betrayals. But what we can control is our response. By embracing this idea, the Stoics freed themselves from the chains of fear and anxiety over things outside of their control. They focused their energy on what they could change, mainly their thoughts, actions, and attitudes, and that's where true power lies. Actionable example. The next time you face a setback, take a moment to reflect. What part of this situation can I control? Maybe you can't change the outcome, but you can control how you interpret it, how you respond, and how you move forward. Section 3. Turning adversity into fuel. One of the most powerful aspects of Stoicism is its ability to turn adversity into fuel for greatness. To the Stoics, Adversity wasn't just something to endure, it was an essential ingredient for becoming stronger and more resilient. Seneca, another towering figure in Stoic philosophy, wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." He believed that just as we grow stronger through physical exercise, we also grow mentally stronger by facing challenges and failures. Let's take a more modern example. Thomas Edison. Before he successfully invented the light bulb, he famously failed over 1,000 times. Most people would have given up after the first few failures, but Edison didn't see those failures as defeat. He saw them as necessary steps on the road to success. He reframed failure in his mind as progress. The Stoics would have admired Edison's mindset. They understood that adversity is like the blacksmith's hammer. It can either shatter you or it can forge you into something stronger. Stoic practice, amor fati. One of the most profound Stoic practices is called amor fati, which means love of fate. This is the idea that we should embrace everything that happens to us, good or bad, as part of the natural course of life. The Stoics didn't just accept adversity, they welcomed it as part of their growth. Actionable example. The next time you encounter a setback, instead of thinking, "Why me?" try asking, "What can I learn from this? How can this challenge make me stronger?" Embrace the adversity and use it to fuel your inner fire. Section 4. The fire within, finding purpose through failure. Failure, paradoxically, can often help us find our true purpose. When we strip away the superficial layers of success, we're left with what truly matters. Marcus Aurelius, during one of the darkest periods of his life, lost his wife, Faustina. The grief was immense, but instead of collapsing under the weight of his loss, Marcus found a renewed sense of purpose. He realized that his role as emperor required him to embody strength and resilience for the sake of his people. His personal tragedy deepened his commitment to his duty. The Stoics believed that living in alignment with nature was key to finding fulfillment. This idea can be applied to failure. When we experience setbacks, they often force us to re-examine what's truly important to us. Failure strips away the illusion of perfection and exposes what really matters: our values, our purpose, and our inner character. In modern psychology, Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and the author of Man's Search for Meaning, echoed this Stoic ideal. Frankl believed that even in the face of extreme suffering, we can find meaning and purpose. This is closely aligned with the Stoic concept of turning adversity into a path toward fulfillment. Actionable example. After facing a significant failure, ask yourself, what does this experience teach me about my true values? How can I use this failure to clarify what really matters in my life? Section 5. Cultivating a Stoic mindset to overcome failure. Now that we've explored the Stoic wisdom on failure, how can you apply these principles in your own life? Let's break it down into a few practical daily practices. Journaling. The Stoics, especially Marcus Aurelius, were avid journalers. They used journaling as a way to reflect on their day, their thoughts, and their failures. After a failure, instead of dwelling on what went wrong, use journaling as a tool to reflect. What did I learn? How can I grow from this? Negative visualization. This is the practice of imagining worst-case scenarios, not to live in fear of them, but to mentally prepare for them. By doing this, you become more resilient when adversity strikes. You've already prepared your mind for the possibility of failure, so when it happens, it doesn't break you. Gratitude. Even in the midst of failure, the Stoics believed in practicing gratitude. By focusing on what we have rather than what we've lost, we shift our mindset from lack to abundance. Gratitude reframes failure, helping us see the hidden gifts in adversity. Actionable example. At the end of each day, take a few minutes to write down one failure or challenge you experienced and how you responded to it. Then, write down what you're grateful for. This practice will train your mind to see failure as an opportunity for growth and gratitude. Section 6. From Failure to Fulfillment. The Stoics believed in the concept of eudaimonia, which means living in accordance with one's true nature and finding fulfillment through virtuous living. For them, success wasn't about wealth or fame. It was about living in harmony with one's values and principles. Cato the Younger, a Stoic hero, is a perfect example of this. Despite facing numerous political failures, Cato remained steadfast in his principles until the end. He didn't seek external success, he sought internal integrity. And in that, he found true fulfillment. The lesson here is that fulfillment isn't about avoiding failure, it's about staying true to yourself in the face of failure. When you live in alignment with your values, even failure becomes a stepping stone toward a more meaningful life. Actionable example. Whenever you face a failure, take a moment to reflect on your values. Ask yourself, am I living in alignment with my core beliefs? How can I use this failure to strengthen my commitment to what truly matters? Closing. The final shift. Let's take a moment to circle back to the story we began with, the moment of failure that seemed like it would crush you. You've faced disappointment, loss, and hardship, and for a while, it may have seemed like your world was unraveling. But let's change the lens through which you view that moment. What if instead of seeing failure as a permanent setback, you viewed it as the foundation for something greater? Failure isn't the end. It's not a dead-end road, nor is it the definitive verdict on your worth, abilities, or future. Failure, especially when viewed through the wisdom of the Stoics, is the spark that ignites the fire within. The very fire that will drive you toward resilience, growth, and a more meaningful existence. What if this failure was the exact catalyst needed to propel you toward a deeper understanding of yourself, your purpose, and your ability to achieve true fulfillment? The Stoics lived by the understanding that everything we encounter in life, including our greatest failures, is part of a greater design. They saw adversity as a necessary tool for self-improvement, a refining fire that forges our character. It's not the adversity itself that defines us, but how we respond to it. In fact, the greater the failure, the greater the opportunity for growth. The lessons buried within failure are the stepping stones to a more fulfilling life. Think about the ancient philosopher Epictetus, who was born into slavery. He didn't have the luxury of choosing his fate. His life was one of hardship. And yet, through Stoicism, he learned to control his inner world, regardless of the circumstances imposed upon him. Epictetus didn't let his external conditions define him. Instead, he embraced the power of his own mind, using Stoic principles to rise above his situation. In the same way, your failures, no matter how devastating they may seem, do not define you. They're merely external events. What defines you is how you respond. One of the most important lessons the Stoics taught us is that failure is inevitable, but suffering is optional. We will all encounter moments where things don't go as planned, where life takes unexpected turns. But it's not the failure itself that causes suffering, it's how we interpret and internalize that failure. If we cling to the belief that success should be easy, or that setbacks are a reflection of our worth, we create unnecessary suffering. However, if we adopt the Stoic mindset and view failure as a natural and essential part of life, we can free ourselves from that suffering. It's a mindset shift, and the key to making this shift lies in cultivating an understanding that failure isn't a reflection of who we are. It's a tool for transformation. The Stoics believed in focusing on what is within our control. You can't always control the outcome, but you can control how you interpret it, how you respond, and what you learn from it. That's where your power lies. Now, imagine the next time you face a failure, whether it's a failed relationship, a business setback, or a personal goal that falls short. Instead of being consumed by frustration or disappointment, you pause. You remind yourself that this failure is an opportunity. It's not a judgment on your capabilities or worth. It's a moment of growth, a chance to refine your skills, strengthen your resilience, and clarify your purpose. You adopt the Stoic practice of amor fati, loving your fate. You embrace the failure, not begrudgingly, but with open arms, seeing it as a part of your path to becoming your best self. Let's talk about the concept of amor fati a bit more. This Stoic practice, as we mentioned earlier, is about loving everything that happens to you, including the things that seem undesirable, especially failure. Imagine walking through life with the mindset that everything, good and bad, is exactly what you need for your personal development. Instead of resisting failure, you welcome it as a teacher. You don't just accept failure, you love it because it's part of your journey, part of what shapes you into the person you're meant to become. Let's also revisit the idea of eudaimonia, which the Stoics defined as the ultimate goal in life, living in accordance with virtue and finding fulfillment through living a life of meaning. The Stoics taught that true fulfillment doesn't come from external success, wealth, or fame. It comes from living a life aligned with your values, from developing a strong character, and from embracing the challenges that come your way with grace and wisdom. Failures, then, are not obstacles to fulfillment, they are essential components of it. Without failure, there is no opportunity to cultivate virtue. Without adversity, there is no chance to strengthen our character. Without setbacks, there is no room for growth. In a way, failure is not the opposite of success. It is the path to success. It's the refining process that molds us into better, more capable, and more resilient versions of ourselves. Think of Cato the Younger, one of the great Stoic figures, who stood by his principles even in the face of overwhelming political failure. He was defeated, outmaneuvered, and eventually forced into a position where he could have compromised his beliefs to save himself. But he didn't. He remained steadfast, valuing his principles more than success in the conventional sense. His life was filled with setbacks, but he found fulfillment in staying true to his values. The lesson here is profound. Success isn't always about winning. It's about staying true to who you are, even in the face of failure. By embracing the Stoic wisdom of amor fati and eudaimonia, you shift your focus from chasing external validation to cultivating inner strength and virtue. The more you practice these Stoic principles, the more you'll find that failure no longer holds the same power over you. Instead of something to fear or avoid, failure becomes a tool, a guidepost along the path to self-discovery and fulfillment. So now, as we close, I want you to reflect on your own life. What are the failures that have weighed you down, the setbacks that still haunt you? Instead of running from them, I invite you to face them head-on, armed with the Stoic wisdom you've learned today. Look at each failure, each setback, and ask yourself, what did I learn from this? How did it shape me? How can I use this experience to move forward with greater strength, clarity, and purpose? Failure is not the end. It is the spark that ignites your inner fire. With the wisdom of the Stoics, you can transform failure into fuel for your journey toward resilience and fulfillment. Every setback you encounter is another opportunity to rise stronger, to align more deeply with your values, and to step into the person you're meant to be. Now go forth and embrace your failures. Use them to unleash the fire within you, a fire that burns brighter with every challenge, and one that will ultimately lead you to a life of purpose, fulfillment, and true success.